of that committee. Also here is Marianne Damasio, who is vice chair of that committee. This meeting tonight was posted officially as a meeting of that committee, but since there's only two of us, that's not a quorum. This is going to simply be an informal informational session. We aren't able to and therefore won't do any actual deliberation, make any actual decisions, but again, we'll simply try to share information. We will give information on the background of this whole project and on the property. Most of that will be provided by the PowerPoint that we'll be seeing, and we'll speak to various details as we go through that. There are going to be opportunities in the very near future to start getting very specific about how we do things with the property and what some of those potential usages will be. We intend to explain how the committee has been addressing its responsibilities and how the public will be involved in the very near future in making some decisions about the property. There will be any number of questions probably now and in the near future that we hope to address, or at least collect the questions on paper so that they can be addressed by the right people at the right time in the right manner. So at this point, I just think I'll mention that the committee, which is very pointedly named the final Plymouth County Hospital Reuse Committee, started out in February of this year. Our job is not to make decisions, but to make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen and through them to the town. And so accordingly, we've been busy. We've been meeting almost every week since February. And what we've been doing is building, not from scratch, but on the hard work done by a lot of other people over the last 16 or 17 years. That's more than half a generation. So that's kind of impressive to me. But there have been many pieces of work done. There's been visions brought to the table, proposals, efforts, ideas of all kinds from all different angles. And what we feel our job as a committee now is to sift through those ideas, those options for usages, look at the pros and cons, and set priorities for what we would recommend to the Board of Selectmen and reasons for those recommendations. So probably the best thing now is to start our presentation.
Yes.
Would you like to do that?
Sure.
Thank you.
So I'm Marianne Damasio, as Phil said, and it's been enjoyable working on this committee and going through a lot of research. So what we have here is a PowerPoint. We presented, I think it was in June, to the selectmen, and we have updated that presentation. So some of this, if you did see that selectmen's meeting, will be a repeat, but we have had some updates. So starting off, pictures. We have probably half of these slides are pictures, so you get to see a bit of what's up there and even what's inside some of the old buildings. So please. So very quickly, we're looking at 55 acres. This used to be the old Plymouth County Hospital. There, we've had it since 1999. It's up on High Street near Pierce Avenue, between those two streets. And there's been a lot of work and studies on this property, many committees, and as Phil said, we're building on the work of many committees before us. Okay? So I will get to use my pointer here. We are looking, the Plymouth County Hospital, which I'll call the PCH site, has 3 parcels. So the parcel down here, well, I'm starting from the bottom where it says Parcel 1, is where the old hospital building is, which is in a very bad state of disrepair. Actually, just last week, part of the building one of the buildings caved in, or part of, it's called the annex, part of that caved in, a very dangerous situation. There's been an emergency group called in to demolish this particular piece very quickly, and that's going on this week. So really a very serious situation with the repair of the building. With the disrepair of the building. So there's about 8 acres here. Section 2 is right in here, and that is where the food pantry is. There's a building. There's the community garden. There is over here the water tower. There's the Bonnie House, or a couple of older buildings, garage supply type buildings. And then the third section is here, this long thin strip, and then it leads out to a meadow. So I'll talk about each of those. And then the purple strip, this is where High Street is, right along here. And then Pierce Avenue is right over here. And then obviously water in there. Next. I think I said most of these things that you could just take a look, but the building is really in need of demolition. It's beyond repair. About 8-10 years ago, there was hope of keeping it available for some development, but that is no longer the case. And we have some pictures to be able to show that. Parcel 2, I mentioned that, it's a U-shaped parcel, about 24 acres, and then parcel 2 is, parcel 3 is another 22 acres, and that parcel has, in almost all of the studies, I would say about 99% of the time, it's recommended that that stay as some kind of open space or conservation, because it's that thin strip of land going to a meadow. It's not really accessible from High Street. Next. Some pictures. So this is the old hospital building, 3 sections, and then there's another section over here that is the part that just collapsed. We have some other pictures of that. But you can see up here, they're just really in disrepair. Windows are cracked, the roof is bad. Can we go to the next one? Here's the one. So this is the part, the annex, and the part to the left caved in recently. And it's really a very serious situation for the town in terms of liability. There are, from our best understanding, people that go into these buildings. There's a website even that has thoughts about getting on there. So it's, I think it's paranormal activity. Anyway, so it's just, we don't want to be liable for having people go in there. I mean, there's a fence all the way around it, and so it's, there's not in any way we're agreeing to any of this. It's, you'll see when you can see some graffiti in there, so. Next. So this is part of Parcel 2. You can see the community garden. The building up here is where the Hanson Food Pantry is, the Beekeepers Association. Next slide. You can see the water tower in the distance. That's on this property. There's land right here, and then behind the community garden over to the right is more land. There's trees, so it's a big area. Next. And then I included this picture in the superintendent's house. This is on High Street, and if you're looking at the Plymouth County Hospital, it's to your left. And a number of buildings were sold over the years on High Street and are residential homes, and this one has been, was it voted once at a town meeting that it would be sold?
Well, initially it's not sold because it was continued to be leased by the county for some sort of function. But then a couple of years ago, town meeting did authorize the selectmen to sell it, but that action has not been acted upon yet. So that is a potential thing that could be acted upon in the not too distant future. Our committee has recommended that that be appraised by a professional independent appraiser before that sort of sale took place.
Next. Did you have a question?
Well, yes, Phil. Is that property still currently being leased or not?
No.
It's not.
Empty.
No. And it's one of the ones that is considered a possibility for sale at some point. And one of the ideas is to use some of the funds for the sale to use in whatever happens at the Plymouth County Hospital.
See, is that already subdivided?
Is it subdivided?
No, this is still part of Parcel 2. There have been legally and recorded at the Registry of Deeds 3 parcels. The first one being the far southerly part with the old building on it. The central one, Parcel 2, being this one. This includes the water tower and the historic Bonnie House and this structure and a few other, and the community garden and the food pantry. That's all one parcel as it now stands. That has not been subdivided. It certainly could be, however.
Thank you.
And this is Parcel 3. This was a early spring day last year. We had a walk scheduled for this day, and it was just beautiful out there. So this is this part of the small thin piece of land we showed you. There were walking paths. These walking paths were for the people at the tuberculosis hospital whose treatment was to get outdoors. Here's the meadow, and there's another picture of this also. So we had another walk, and this was only a month or so later. We don't have any spring pictures of it. Next. So what did we do? We felt, and I think rightly so, the need to look at the hospital parcel first. The building has hindered our options. So we looked at the hospital parcel. You know, most of the studies have said it needs to come down. The condition has worsened. As I said, just this past week, it has really worsened into an emergency situation, unsafe. So that is being taken care of. There is some hazardous material, asbestos, in there, and that is under review now for determining the approximate cost to have the building taken down. It is expensive. We've tried to explore different options to limit cost to taxpayers, and the next couple of slides we're just going briefly over what we've done as a committee to explore different options. Oh, this is the annex. This actually was before it came down this week. It was already in disrepair. There'd been a fire there, so it really, I don't see any developer trying to keep this and making something out of that.
Probably not.
So let me say again, this is only that we're focused on the parcel 1, which is the 8 acres where the hospital building is, because we felt that was the highest priority. And here are some pictures from inside, just to give you a sense of what it looks like. So I have about 4 pictures that Phil took. Next. I'll let the pictures do the talking.
Yeah, I don't see any ghosts up there.
Right, and you can see that there have been people in here, with the graffiti. So they're, the fence is up to keep them out.
Question.
Yes.
Now, do we have an estimate at all, or any estimates on the costs of?
Yes, that's in 1 or 2 slides. We'll get right to that. Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. So, there we go. So, that's some pictures are worth 1,000 words, I think. Seeing those is quite stunning. So, what have we done? We've looked at the Old Colony planning report. That was a feasibility study that was done a number of years ago. It had a lot of information from everything that had gone before, so we were trying not to redo anything that had already been done. We looked at the initial info on cost of demolition. There was an estimate from 2015 that was 1.5 million to take it down, and a big part of that is the hazardous material that is in there. So we're getting, the town administrator and the town is getting more specific info. They've done recent walkthrough with engineers, and we should have more and better information within the next week. And then we had some meetings with some people around town, Teresa Santa Lucia at the Hanson Housing Authority. We met with Laura Kemet from the CPC, the Community Preservation Committee. We talked to Josh. One of the committee members is trying to find out if there are any funds available through different state possibilities. And Phil met with the South Shore Chamber of Commerce because they're doing some planning.
Right.
And then we were able to, with Teresa's help, we're able to get a couple of nonprofit developers that she works with in her work, where they do some housing projects, to come and tour the site. Someone had suggested recovery centers, one of the abutters, like a drug treatment center, which we looked into. We don't feel like it's the appropriate choice for that site. We looked at place called Urban Land Institute to get some technical assistance. A couple of Phil and Dawn went down to Braintree, where they had an open house on a solar field. You might have seen it across from the T. And we had a solar company representative come here. And we've held several walks for community members to be able to see the site. So what have we learned? So we did learn in about 2015 that it was about 1.5 million. It wasn't a really detailed projection, or what's the word I'm looking for? Estimate. But that's what we have. I have in parentheses here more details of recent estimates here. We had hoped to have those, but they're still working on it from the walkthrough last week. The housing authority, we've learned, has been reorganized, and if the town and residents decide we want to move forward with some kind of development for that parcel, they are able to assist with some of that work. And we could apply for CPC funding for part of the demolition. It does have limits on the uses if we do that, and it also has time considerations, because if we wanted to have it demolished soon, we'd have to wait till it goes through for approval through the committee and through town meeting, so it pushes things out a bit also. We looked at whether or not people had said, what about over 55, senior housing, and the developers that visited us said the funds are very limited these days. The state and federal are just not doing that as much as they used to. I'm sorry? I don't know if there's a glut in the market. We didn't get that far. They said if there's funding, there's still possibility. The feasibility study indicated that there is still a need in this. I know in Hanson, all indications are that it still would be a good thing. But there's just not a lot of funding for it anymore. If the property had some affordable housing on it, there is more funding, and if it is connected to transit-oriented development, meaning close to transportation, which it is within a mile of the commuter rail, there also is funding for that. But some question as to how easy it is to do that. As I said, we looked at medical treatment center, but felt that even though there were some benefits, it did not seem like an appropriate choice for the place. And a couple of places, the Urban Lands Institute and the Chamber of Commerce, Upshur Chamber of Commerce, feel the best site use is to enhance the quality and attractiveness overall of South Hanson neighborhood. So what does that mean? First we'll go to the options. So what can we do about the demolition? We tried to look at a lot of options. One we looked at was to seek developer to demolish, incorporate into the cost of project. We did not have people knocking at our door, but one of the developers said might be some interest. Then whether or not we could have a developer who would demolish in exchange for the land, that also is a possibility, but we didn't really seem to be getting much traction on that either. There's some limited opportunities with the soil and infrastructure, so there's a lot of cost for developers to make that work. And then if we gave that away, there'd be less control in the future. And then also there is something called cost of community services when you do bring development in, even though it feels like you're getting tax revenue, there's also a cost of service, and a lot of studies have shown that the cost of community service is often greater than the revenue that's coming in for taxes. You have police, you have school, you have fire, you have other services. And combination of funds. Can we use community preservation funds? I mentioned already that it could be a possibility. We met with the CPC, Laura Kemet, and it limits use of what you can do with it, and timing is an issue also. There's some strings attached if you use CPC funds. We did look into some grants. We weren't able to find any for demolition. There's some for rebuilding and doing parks and other things like that. It's not to say there absolutely isn't. We didn't do an exhaustive search, but we did talk to a few people and who know this field. And the Board of Selectmen is considering a special fund, like a dedicated fund that would, if there were proceeds from sales of the superintendent's house or from other town property, potentially could go into this fund that would work for maintenance and offsetting some of the cost of demolition. And then the tax, which we were trying to figure out ways to avoid the benefits of that. There are no strings attached to it. It maximizes what we can do and flexibility with it. And there's possibility on the next slide, or soon we'll talk about some other options of a solar field, and they're maybe able to defray some of the costs with the solar field. So what do we say? We have some preliminary recommendations from our work. We want to clarify that we as a committee don't make any final decisions. It's up to the Board of Selectmen and the residents of the town to decide what happens. So given what we've learned, the next couple of slides say what we think would be some interesting options. The next slide after that. So here's what we think should happen next. So complete the initial estimate and the cost to both decontaminate and demolish the building, and that is in action now. Request town approval for bond. There is a town meeting next Monday, and there is a warrant on it for the demolition of this building. And the amount is 1.8 million, and that is assuming that the cost of we had from 2015 will go up. We don't know exactly, and we hope to have more information by Monday. And then we would develop, not we, but the town would develop and send out requests for proposal for the decontamination and the demolition of the site.
Seeking competitive figures.
Competitive, yes. So it could be less than the amount that's on the warrant. We still have a lot to learn. So, recommendations. So solar one, if we get the building down, here's one recommendation, is a solar field. Some of the towns around here have solar fields. Braintree does, Duxbury does, as does Situate. And it would provide income for the town, help defray the hopefully cost of demolition. It would not have a big impact on the neighbors. We're very conscious of the fact that High Street and where this is located is a residential area, so anything that would be at the site, we want it to have a minimal impact. And a solar field, you could retain vegetation to have a fair amount of buffer between the solar field and the neighbors. It would keep the land available for future use. They're, I wouldn't say easy to take down, but they're not completely permanent in the case of a building. You know, it wouldn't be as challenging in 20, 25 years to demolish solar field as it is to remove a building.
They're very removable.
Yes, they're removable.
Yes, it would be disassembled.
Right, disassembled is a better word. It wouldn't be demolished, and it'd be easier. And there's such a thing as a power purchase agreement that towns can enter into with companies, and they would come in, they install the solar, they maintain them, and the town would get some benefit that would be in a power purchase agreement. We called Duxbury, or it was online. Duxbury has a smaller array than we could put in a place like this, and they get $35,000 a year equivalent energy reduction. I would think it would be probably at least double that if we were to put something here.
And the town, by the way, would retain ownership of the land.
That's right. That's important too. The town would retain ownership of the land.
It's very cool.
And then we met briefly one night with some of the two consultants from the Community Preservation Committee in the process of doing their visioning and planning. And we were asking about affordable housing because they said there's funding for affordable housing, and we thought we weren't sure that was a very good option, but one of the ideas was, what if we just had a couple of units, like 2 units with two buildings with 2 units? It would enable us to get some of the funding that's available for affordable housing without using the entire space. So that was just an option that came up recently. We have not really researched that, but just wanted to inform people that it's a possibility. And when we say affordable housing, it's also called workforce housing.
Right.
And I forget what the number is. the percentage, it's like 100 something percent of the poverty level. So it's really people who are working, making housing affordable for them. That's part of the way they were wording that description. You remember what
Right,
they said?
it's workforce housing. Basically, it's to have housing that's affordable for people who do a lot of really important jobs that we take for granted, and we need people to do them. This is the next slide.
Okay, so parcel 2, keep what we have, the buildings that are there, where the food pantry is, the community garden. There's, we mentioned appraise and sell the superintendent's house that we showed a picture of before, and proceeds to a dedicated fund. These are all recommendations, as I said before. I just want to remind people it's not said and done. We're just saying these, given what we learned, this is what we'd recommend. And then develop the remaining land for the community, for community use. A lot of the surveys in the feasibility study said we need a place. A lot of people mentioned Whitman. The Whitman Park has all these lovely spaces for people to congregate, children to play, and so we have a few possibilities, suggestions with a town green, a playground. We're not saying every single one of these things, but these are some suggestions with passive recreation for all ages. There's a Bay Circuit Trail that goes all the way from Kingston all the way around Boston and up to the North Shore, and parts of it are on the street, on High Street. So we'd like to get that through the Plymouth County Hospital. There's already been some, is it an easement or there's something already for that?
We've made many preparations for locating it off the road, but until these big decisions get made, we can't really do it.
Right.
But it's a decision that's just begging to be made.
Yes. And whether we have a bandstand, amphitheater, dog park, all these kind of choices that would then go back to the community, and these are, again, just ideas. And then Bonnie House, keep that as a historic education center. There have been some improvements made on that, some of them
Right.
with CPC funds. And then, given what everyone in our town knows about the water issues that we've had this summer, there is a move to identify a footprint that would be needed for a second water tower. And then for parcel 3, to keep it as the trails, maintain and improve the trail system. Just mentioned to see if we could get the Bay Circuit Trail, see if we can get some grants to help make that happen. And then there's some invasive species. We'd like to see if we can control those and preserve the old meadow. There's a picture of the meadow earlier with the snow. And then maintain the Bonnie House and the farm and our roots to 1800s agriculture. So what's next? Completing the competitive cost estimates for decontamination and demolition, which is happening now. Consider the town meeting article to fund demolition, so that will be next Monday, and it's a bond for 1.8 million. And pursue other means to reduce the taxpayer impact of that. And we mentioned some of these already, whether or not it's CPC funds to assist, sale of some properties, if there were solar field revenues from that. And then also we just put in be caution on other types of development that would bring in less than we would be putting out.
Right, if there was a thought that tax revenue could help us out tax-wise, the cost of providing services might undo that benefit.
Mm-hmm.
So care is needed.
So we will end there. Maybe just go back and put it on a picture or something.
I have a question
Sure.
regarding, this would be parcel 2, if you could pull the map up,
Oh, so
Okay.
all the way back to the beginning.
if it's possible.
I'll do it the hard way because I don't know the right button to do it the easy way.
Sure.
There we go.
Yes.
Parcel
Okay.
2 is here.
Yes. So, question was, behind the access road that runs behind the buildings in parcel 2, there's more land And I'm trying to see how much land there actually is behind the access road. Yes, in that, exactly, Phil, in that area and down to the right. So there's several acres that are overgrown right now that you
Yes.
cannot see.
That's correct.
Wondering how many acres were there, if that would be a good site for solar arrays.
Well, we have looked at that very closely. In fact, we've walked the whole thing with a representative from the company that built and operates the facility in Braintree. Topography is very important. There's a 50-foot drop from this point here down to here. Some of this area is very steep and faces east or even northeast. So the exposure for solar here is actually quite poor.
Okay.
This area down here, it's relatively level. There's a slight drop off to the east, but not steeply, and a slight sloping down to the south. This is actually very favorable for solar. What's also useful is that there is an existing, very heavily forested and vegetated area between the old hospital and the residential areas. That's a barrier that can be good. One would probably not retain the 80-foot high trees. One would probably take those down, but one would very much want to enhance the lower growth, which removing trees would actually help so that there would be a visual barrier. But the company that looked at this, they're headquartered in Massachusetts. They build globally. They've been profitable for many years, and they pronounced this site to be very interesting, this portion of the site. Further north would be less so, but this also has access to existing power lines to and from the street, which is a very strong consideration, because National Grid, we are told, if they had to install something from scratch, the cost is approximately $1 million a mile. So if we went from here to here, that'd probably be $500,000. But we believe from early indications that almost everything you need is already here for this part of the site.
And I understand there is something at the other
There's
end also.
electricity,
In the
well,
meadow.
the poles still coming in off the High Street.
There is existing power lines there now from this location right into this, to the back of the existing hospital building. That was part of the reason this visitor pronounced the site interesting and saw it as a pro rather than as a negative.
Another question. As you know from years of being in town, there's been some interest in the past on a cell tower located in this general area. Do we have any proposals from anyone on, as far as recovery of funds go, as far as leasing a small section to put a cell tower in?
It's interesting to me that that as yet has not come up for active discussion in the committee. What's most actively discussed is how do we deal with the large, I won't call it a white elephant because it's really not white at all, but dealing with this because that inhibits discussion of many things, including that. In my just common sense thinking, this isn't a decision, it's not deliberation, it's just me wondering, is there a need for cell tower existence in Hanson that has not yet been met? We know that in areas not on this map, up in this, towards the north end of Wampatuck Pond, which this is, Wampatuck Pond here, there has been discussion of a couple of options. And farther down off the southern end of this map, way down here, there are some existing towers, but whether they need to be supplemented or whether there's a market for more cell tower existence that could somehow generate revenue for the town. We know that in the past there was a brief discussion about maybe something on the water tower,
Yes,
which is located about here. We are not focusing on that. We're talking about things that would come before in any discussion.
Yes.
Now, there's enough property here. Who knows what might be feasible? Who knows what might come up as we go forward? I would say the committee has not ruled that out or in.
I commend you both and everybody on the committee for your work and your on this project. It's having been involved in town projects, I understand the time it takes and dedication, so I really appreciate the work that you have all done I do know as a taxpayer, there will be questions regarding revenue, and that's why I brought that up as far as recovery goes of funds.
Right.
Perhaps, I'm sure you have other options you're exploring.
Well, we have those same questions too as a committee. What we have identified is the need for answers and hopefully a pathway to get those answers, seeking the right competitive mechanisms for pricing out this specific task, that specific task, et cetera, and then finding all the different options for how to fund those tasks. One of the overall things I would say is we ourselves as a committee, we're grateful for the work that many other people have done over a number of years on this. We have found a little bit of new stuff, but a lot of things just need to be reviewed and made very specific. And a lesson that we also think we've learned is a property that's this large, 55 acres, something a half a mile long, with all these different features, both buildings and topography, et cetera, it's very complex. And we know one of the challenges has been it's very hard to address all the possibilities and solve all the problems with one report or one set of recommendations. We've chosen to actually divide that up into bite-sized pieces. We're speaking right now primarily about what to do down here. We know there are existing things that have been successfully done during the last decade here. Again, food pantry, beekeepers, Bonnie House, etc. And there are some other things that should be relatively easy to do. Municipal areas such as needs such as water tower resources and that sort of thing. But we, as a committee right now, we can't address all those issues. We've identified elements of what we might do in the middle for park, but right now the biggest task is to decide what and how to do with the old building.
Anything to add before we wrap up?
I think that overall, again, we're grateful for people's patience with this, but as committee members, we just want the highest priorities to be addressed in an effective way, hopefully a cost-effective way. The next few days might help us make a lot of progress towards that. We hope people will come forward with more questions. We hope there will be answers available to us and to the public in answer to those questions. But we think that there is an appetite for progress in this area, and we hope to help meet that. So thanks to everyone for their interest.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.